Welcome back to Investing Talk podcast. Today, we're taking a closer look at a company that's really been making some waves in the biotech sector, Sana Biotechnology. For this discussion, we're focusing specifically on their upcoming earnings report. We want to, dissect the raw data, look at analyst expectations, and figure out what it all really means for you, the discerning investor. Our mission here is to cut through the noise, basically, give you the most important nuggets of knowledge, the insights from the latest pre-earnings analysis. And hey, before we jump in, if you're finding these discussions valuable, please think about subscribing, maybe liking, leaving a comment. Your engagement genuinely helps us bring you more of these conversations. And if there's a specific company you'd like us to examine in a future discussion, just drop its name in the comments below. Your input really guides our work. Okay, so let's start with the basics for Sana Biotechnology. When can we actually expect them to report, and what are the general expectations?
Right. So we're looking at an estimated report date of Thursday, August 14th, 2025. Probably before market open. That's typical. Now, the consensus among analysts, well, revenue is expected to be minimal, maybe even non-existent.
Right, because there's still pre-commercialization.
Exactly. They're not selling anything yet. So the key financial focus is definitely going to be on the EPS, the earnings per share. The consensus estimate there is for a loss of megajit 20 cents per share.
20 cents loss. Is there much variation there or like a whisper number floating around?
Not really seeing a widely circulated whisper number for this one. Expectations seem pretty aligned, actually, hovering right between negajit 20 cents and maybe negative 21 EPS.
Okay, so a pretty tight band then.
Yeah, very tight.
And what about the company itself? Do they offer any specific financial forecasts or guidance?
No, not for this quarter. Management has been consistently emphasizing their focus is on the R&D side. The ongoing clinical and preclinical expenditures, hitting key milestones in their research, that's their priority.
Not so much the quarterly financial metrics.
Exactly. Their goal is clearly just advancing their pipeline therapies through development. That's what they talk about.
Okay, so knowing what's expected, let's look back a bit. How has Sana performed in the past few quarters? Have they surprised analysts before?
Well, this is where it gets kind of fascinating. They actually have a consistent track record of beating these EPS estimates, but usually by pretty small margins.
Okay, like how small?
For example, Q1 2025, they lost negative $0.20 versus an estimated negative 22 cents.
Okay.
So 2-cent beat. Q4 2024, they lost negative 35 cents versus an estimated negative 38 cents, 3 cents better. And Q3 2024 lost negative $0.41 against an estimate of a negative $0.45, so 4 cents. And the trend goes back further, Q2 2024 as well. It seems primarily driven by good cost control, managing expenses carefully.
Okay, so they're consistently good at managing costs, beating on that loss per share number, which sounds positive, right? But what actually happens to the stock price right after these reports? Do these beats translate into gains?
That's a really important question because the post-earnings price reaction, well, it hasn't been consistently positive despite those beats.
Interesting.
Yeah, after Q1 2025, the stock did trend higher briefly, but then it reversed. Risk-off sentiment kind of hit the whole biotech sector then. Q4 2024 saw only a marginal move, really, just a small bump. Then broader selling hit biotechs again. Q3 2024 had a brief rally, but that reversed within like 48 hours.
Wow.
And maybe most telling, Q2 2024 had almost no major reaction at all.
Which suggests?
Well, it reflects pretty low expectations for these numbers, right? And probably a high-risk tolerance from the shareholders they already have. If you connect this to the bigger picture, it really tells us that for Sana, the market isn't reacting much, if at all, to these slight EPS beats from cost savings. The focus for investors, it seems, is just elsewhere.
Okay, that's a crucial point. So if not the small EPS beats, what are the key metrics that seem to matter beyond just the headline numbers?
Well, the consistent EPS improvement through cost reduction is a positive trend, showing discipline. It's narrowing their quarterly losses. But, as we said, revenue remains negligible. For the trailing 12 months, their net income was still a loss of $266.76 million.
That's significant.
It is. So what's absolutely critical for a pre-revenue company like Sana is, one, their cash burn, how fast they're spending money. And maybe even more importantly, their cash runway.
You meaning how long they can keep operating?
Exactly. How long can they operate before they need to raise more money? Which, often means dilution for existing shareholders.
Right. Selling more stock potentially makes everyone's piece smaller.
Precisely. So for these early-stage companies, cash runway is king. It dictates how much time they have to hit those crucial R&D milestones.
That makes total sense. Cash is the fuel. So, were there any major news items or developments for Sana during this last quarter? Things that might influence the results? Product launches, new partnerships?
No major product launches, no big partnership deals announced this quarter. The updates we've seen from the company have really focused on their progress in the clinical pipeline.
The science, basically.
Yes, specifically advancing their CRT and stem cell platforms.
Hmm.
These are, complex cutting-edge therapies. And we've heard about recent trial initiations or maybe extensions for their lead candidates, the ones furthest along. So it really is all about the scientific progress for them right now, pushing things forward.
And how does the wider environment fit in? The broader biotech sector, the economy. Has that been helping or hurting Sana?
Sentiment in small to mid-cap biotech has been pretty mixed lately. A bit cautious, maybe. Rising interest rates, for instance, definitely put pressure on valuations across the board, makes it tougher for these growth stories.
Because future earnings are worth less today.
Right, the discounting effect.
Yeah.
But there has been some pickup in risk appetite since mid-year, partly fueled by M&A speculation in the sector. Still, funding remains a significant challenge for many pre-revenue companies, which, again, puts that huge spotlight right back on cash runway and trial progress.
Always comes back to the cash and the science.
Pretty much, yeah. It's a tricky environment.
And what about the analysts covering Sana? Have their views shifted recently? Any upgrades, downgrades?
Their targets and ratings have actually remained pretty stable, which is interesting. Analysts consistently highlight the potential. They talk about Sana's technology platform, its promise, but they also consistently express concerns about execution risk. Can they actually deliver? And the long time horizon. It takes years.
So cautious optimism.
That sums it up pretty well.
Yeah.
We haven't seen any major rating changes since the last earnings report. There's excitement for the potential, but tempered by the realities.
Okay, let's shift to the stock itself. What has the price been doing heading into this report? And what's the market bracing for in terms of a potential move?
Yeah, here's where it gets really interesting from a trading perspective. The stock has actually had a sharp rally, up over 50% in just the past 2 months. It climbed from its 52-week lows around $8.26 to about $4.25 recently.
Oh, that's a big move. What drove that?
Seems like it was propelled by that improved sector sentiment we mentioned, plus some technical momentum kicking in. Heading into earnings now, it's been kind of consolidating, moving sideways in roughly the $3.50 range, digesting those gains maybe.
So with the report coming up, what are the key price levels investors should be watching? Support, resistance.
Good question. Important support levels to watch would be around $3.50. That lines up pretty well with its 50-day moving average, which traders watch. Below that, $2.80 looks like a more significant support zone based on another key moving average. On the upside, resistance. Well, the recent high around $4.80 is the first hurdle. Beyond that, the 52-week high way up at $7.30 is the bigger target, but that would obviously require a very strong positive catalyst.
And the options market. What's it telling us about the expected move after earnings? Is it pricing in a lot of volatility?
Yeah, it is. The options market is pricing in an implied move of roughly plus or minus 18% to 22% for the week following the earnings announcement.
18 to 22%, either way.
Exactly. And this is pretty typical based on what we call implied volatility crush for small cap biotechs like this with no revenue.
Explain that crush bit.
Sure, it just means the uncertainty premium built into the options price tends to disappear very quickly after the news is out, even if the stock moves a lot.
Yeah.
So the market expects a big swing, but that high level of expected volatility and thus option cost drops post-event.
Got it. So a significant potential swing baked in.
Definitely something for investors to consider. Reflects the uncertainty.
All right, thinking about potential outcomes. What would a truly bullish scenario look like for Sana post-report? What kind of news drives a big positive reaction?
Well, a strong positive reaction would likely need a substantial surprise. Something well beyond just a small EPS beat on cost savings. We're talking like really positive clinical trial data, maybe from one of their key programs, showing better than expected efficacy or safety.
A scientific breakthrough, basically.
Or maybe expedited regulatory progress. Or perhaps a major new partnership announcement with a big pharma company. That would de-risk things significantly. Also, guidance pointing to an extended cash runway longer than expected would be very good news. Or perhaps a much smaller operating loss than forecast, say net of $0.16 EPS, or even better. Tangible progress in their main clinical programs could definitely spark a breakout.
And the flip side. What triggers a bearish reaction? What sends the stock down?
A larger than expected loss would be negative, suggests higher cash burn. Any negative updates on their clinical trials, that's probably the biggest risk. Delays, safety issues, disappointing results, that could hit hard.
Makes sense.
Also, any new concerns about their financing needs or hints of accelerated cash burn shortening that runway, that could trigger selling. Weakness in their forward-looking statements, any unexpected delays in timelines, or just a lack of clarity on future funding plans would definitely weigh on the shares.
Okay, so if you had to boil it down, the single most important metric or piece of information to focus on in this specific report for Sana, what is it?
Without a doubt, it's their cash runway and the detailed progress or lack thereof in their R&D pipeline. Any updates on clinical trial milestones, positive or negative. Or, conversely, any setbacks. That's what the market will scrutinize very closely.
Cash and pipeline. Got it.
That's the lifeblood. How much time do they have, and are they making real progress with that time?
So bringing this all together then, what's our overall leaning for Sana heading into this report? Neutral, bullish, bearish.
Yeah, based on everything we've discussed, the overall leaning feels neutral to maybe cautiously bearish.
Cautiously bearish. Why?
Well, while they do have that history of minor EPS beats from cost control, the stock has had that sharp recent rally. Combine that rally with a lack of obvious immediate commercial catalysts. It suggests the risk-reward profile might lean towards either a muted reaction or potentially negative price action. That is, unless there's a significant positive surprise on the pipeline or cash front. My sort of confidence score here is maybe a 4 out of 10 for a positive surprise, driving things much higher immediately. The market needs something more fundamental than just managing costs well right now.
Okay, that makes sense. So for someone thinking about trading around this event, what are some strategic considerations? Depends on risk tolerance, I assume.
Absolutely. For those who are more risk averse, it's generally, probably advisable to avoid holding the stock through the earnings announcement. There's just a high binary risk here. Big potential gap up or down. Very volatile.
Better to wait and see.
Might be better to consider entering a position after the earnings, once the dust settles and the direction is clearer. Now, for the more risk-tolerant investor or trader, option strategies like straddles or strangles could be considered. These aim to profit from that large implied move we talked about, regardless of direction. It's a volatility play.
But risky.
Very. You absolutely have to manage your position size carefully. Options on these smaller biotechs can be illiquid, with wide bid-ask spreads. Remember, any significant upward move likely needs truly unexpected positive news on the clinical or funding side, while downside could happen quickly if there are disappointments on cash or the pipeline. So tight stop losses are highly recommended for any short-term positions.
Okay. So summing up for Sana Biotechnology, it seems clear that while the financial numbers matter, the real story isn't just the EPS beat, it's the science and the cash.
Absolutely. The consistent EPS beats show good cost management, sure, that's important. But without revenue, the market's attention is just firmly fixed on those long-term pipeline milestones. And, crucially, how long their current cash can sustain those operations.
It really is a race against time for innovation, isn't it?
It often feels that way in this space, yeah.
What stands out most to you as we think about Cerna and companies like it? I mean, for these pre-commercial outfits, how much does that traditional quarterly earnings dance really matter compared to the qualitative progress, the actual science? It's a really fascinating question, isn't it? How we value pure future potential in today's market. Something for all of us to think about. Well, thank you for joining us on Investing Talk podcast today. We hope this look into Sana Biotechnology's upcoming earnings has given you some valuable insights. We look forward to having you back for our next discussion.